That day, I realized I was about to lose everything. But what they didn't know was that I was ready to fight. Life had always taught me to be wary of appearances. My father, Juan, hadn't built an empire out of thin air. He had become one of the most respected businessmen in the country through sheer determination. I grew up admiring his strength, his vision, his way of leading. But when my mother passed away, everything changed. He became vulnerable, lost, and that's when Savannah entered our lives. Beautiful, charismatic, and incredibly manipulative, she knew exactly how to weave my father into her web. In no time, they were married, and she became the new queen of our world. At first, I tried to believe she might actually be good for him. But little by little, I realized her intentions went far beyond being a devoted wife. She wanted power. She wanted the company. And then, it happened. That night was supposed to be like any other. I had spent the day at the office, helping Mariana, the CFO, and my mentor, go over some contracts. Since joining the company, Mariana had always been my biggest ally, teaching me every detail about the business world. But that day, I sensed something was off. Mariana seemed unusually tense, and she kept looking at me with a mix of concern and hesitation. "What is it?" I asked. She sighed before handing me a manila envelope. This was left in my office anonymously. "I think you need to see it." I took the envelope, feeling an unsettling twist in my stomach. Inside were copies of documents signed by my father, or rather, forged in his name. They transferred part of the company to Savannah and, even worse, gave her more administrative power than me. My heart turned cold. This can't be real. My father would never do this without telling me. I thought the same, so I had it checked. The signature was scanned and printed, clearly forged. I shot to my feet. Someone was trying to take the company from me, and I knew exactly who. That night, I decided to get proof. I waited for the right moment and went to the main conference room, where Savannah often met with her influential friends whenever my father wasn't around. I should have announced myself, but instead, I stayed behind the slightly open door, and I heard everything. Savannah's voice was sharp, cutting like a blade. "Juan is already in my hands. He'll sign everything without even realizing it. In a few months, Gabriella will be out of the company." Then, another voice spoke, one I wasn't expecting. "What if she gets suspicious? She's smarter than you think." I recognized that voice. Fernando. An executive who had been working with us for years, always sucking up to Savannah. But something about his tone seemed hesitant, like he wasn't entirely comfortable with this. Savannah let out a low, amused laugh. "If she gets suspicious? I don't care. The documents are already prepared. By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late." My blood boiled. They were plotting against me. Against my father's empire. I could have stormed into the room right then and confronted them. But instead, I held back. If they thought I would go down easily, they were dead wrong. I walked away with a new determination. I needed allies. The next morning, I went straight to Lucas's office, my best friend and most trusted lawyer. He listened to everything in silence, his expression darkening as he examined the forged documents. "This is a blatant coup. And if these papers go through, your stepmother could legally take control before we have a chance to fight back." I clenched my fists. "We need a plan." Lucas studied me for a moment, then gave a knowing smirk. "Then let's play this game. But Gabriella, make no mistake, this is going to be a war." I nodded. If it was war Savannah wanted, that's exactly what she was going to get. Before leaving Lucas's office, he handed me a small note that had been left for him anonymously that morning. Only 3 words were written on it. "Watch out for Mauricio." My heart pounded. Mauricio was one of the company's partners, but I had never gotten along with him. What did he have to do with this? Lucas and I exchanged glances. "I think we just found our next target." I took a deep breath. The battle was only beginning. The war had started. I knew Savannah and her allies were planning something big, but they underestimated one crucial thing: I wasn't an amateur. The next few days were a silent battle. My goal was clear: gather evidence against my stepmother and her accomplices before she could take me down. That note Lucas received never left my mind: "Watch out for Mauricio." I had always been suspicious of him. Mauricio was one of the company's oldest partners, but his loyalty had never been clear. He always played both sides, supporting my father when it suited him and aligning himself with whoever held the most power. With the help of Mariana, my mentor and CFO, we started going through the company's internal documents. And that's when we found something that sent chills down my spine. "Here it is," Mariana said, showing me a hidden contract buried in the records. It was a stock transfer agreement, directed to Mauricio. "He's secretly buying shares?" I asked, trying to make sense of it. "He's not buying them. He's getting them for free," Mariana said, her expression grave. "These shares are coming directly from an account that belongs to Savannah." My pulse quickened. Savannah was bribing Mauricio to ensure he voted in her favor on the company's board. Lucas studied the documents and gave me a firm nod. "This is illegal. If we can prove that this deal was made in exchange for influence on the board, we can charge them with corporate fraud." I took a deep breath. "That means we have a real chance to take Savannah down before she takes us down." Lucas smirked. "Exactly. But we need more proof." While I was gathering evidence against my stepmother, she was making her own moves. One afternoon, I was unexpectedly called into a board meeting. As soon as I walked into the room, I could feel the tension in the air. Every board member was present, and Savannah was sitting at the head of the table as if she owned the company. My father wasn't there. She had planned it this way. Savannah gave me that fake smile I knew all too well. "Gabriella, I'm so glad you could join us. We need to discuss the future of the company." "Funny. I didn't know we had a meeting scheduled." She tilted her head, feigning innocence. "You've been so busy lately. I thought it would be best to handle a few things without bothering you." My stomach twisted. She was trying to cut me out of the decision-making process. Then, she continued. "We're proposing some changes to the board. As you know, your father has been going through a difficult time and may need to step away temporarily." She paused dramatically. "And to ensure stability, I believe we all agree that I'm the best option to take over as interim CEO." The room fell silent. I clenched my fists, feeling the anger boil inside me. She was trying to seize control, right in front of me. But I wasn't unprepared. I took a deep breath and stood up. "That's very interesting, Savannah. But before we discuss who should lead this company, I think we need to clear up a few things first." I pulled out the documents Mariana and I had uncovered and tossed them onto the table. "For instance, would you like to explain why you've been secretly transferring shares to Mauricio?" The impact was immediate. The board members started murmuring among themselves, and Savannah's expression hardened. "What is this?" she asked, grabbing the papers. "This is corporate fraud. And I have the evidence to prove it." Mauricio, who was seated beside her, began to sweat. He knew that if this got out, his career would be over. I smiled to myself. The war was just beginning. After the meeting, I headed to the parking lot, still feeling my blood boiling. That's when I heard a voice behind me. "You played that well in there." I turned around and saw Fernando, the executive I had overheard talking to Savannah in the secret meeting. I crossed my arms. "Are you here to threaten me?" He let out a small chuckle. "On the contrary. I want to help you." I frowned, suspicious. "Why?" "You're on her side." He sighed. "Not exactly. Savannah made me a few promises, but I never fully trusted her. And after what happened today, I think she's about to go down." I studied him, trying to gauge if he was telling the truth. "And what do you get out of helping me?" He smirked. "I want to be on the right side when the dust settles." I thought for a moment before extending my hand. "Then bring me proof that she's manipulating my father." "Do that, and I'll make sure you're safe when she falls." He shook my hand. "Deal." I knew Savannah wouldn't go down without a fight. After the board meeting where I exposed her scheme with Mauricio, she became more cautious. But I knew her well enough to understand she wouldn't give up easily. She still had one last trick up her sleeve, and I needed to be ready. The next day, I got an unexpected call. It was from the hospital. "Miss Gabriella? Your father was admitted this morning." My heart stopped for a second. What? What happened? He had a severe blood pressure spike and collapsed. "He's stable now, but he needs to be monitored." I grabbed my things and rushed to the hospital. When I arrived at his room, there he was, my father, Juan, lying in bed, pale and visibly exhausted. And who was sitting beside him, holding his hand like the devoted wife she pretended to be? Savannah. She looked at me with a triumphant smile. Oh, Gabriella, I'm so glad you're here. Juan needs us now. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. What happened? My father looked at me with tired eyes. My blood pressure, too much stress at the company. Savannah gently stroked his arm. He's overwhelmed, sweetheart. Maybe it would be best if he stepped away for a while, don't you think? My breath caught for a moment. So this was her plan. She wanted to convince my father to step down officially, clearing the way for her to take full control. And worse, he was about to agree. Dad, don't do this. This is exactly what she wants. He sighed. Gabriella, I know you think Savannah is against us, but she's been an incredible wife. And I'm tired. Maybe it really is best if I leave the company in her hands for a while. I looked at Savannah, who was smiling victoriously. But then, a voice cut through the tension. Juan, you're about to make the biggest mistake of your life. It was Fernando. He stepped into the room, holding an envelope in his hands. And I can prove it. Fernando pulled out a recording. This is audio from the secret meeting Savannah had with Mauricio and the others. Listen. He pressed play. And then, we all heard it. Savannah's voice was sharp and unmistakable. Juan is already in my hands. He'll sign everything without even realizing it. In a few months, Gabriella will be out of the company. My father's eyes widened. But then, something even worse played. What if he resists? Mauricio's voice asked. Simple. I can give him an extra dose of help. Nothing serious, just enough to make him more vulnerable. My blood ran cold. She had been drugging my father to weaken him, to make him easier to manipulate. My father turned to Savannah, his voice trembling. Is this true? She scrambled for an explanation. Juan, sweetheart, that was taken out of context. But Fernando wasn't done. He handed Lucas a second document. This is the hospital's medical report. The doctor ran tests and confirmed there were traces of sedatives in Juan's system. Small doses, administered over the past few months. My father blinked, confused. But Savannah always gave me my medication. Silence fell over the room. And then, he realized. Savannah shot up from her seat. This is ridiculous. This was all set up by Gabriella, because she's jealous of me. Juan, you can't believe this. But my father's expression had changed. It was anger. Anger at being deceived. Get out of my way. His voice was firm. Savannah tried to step closer, but he raised his hand. Leave. She looked around, realizing no one in the room was on her side. Then, with one last glare at me, she spat. You think you've won, Gabriella? This isn't over. And she stormed out of the room. But I knew the truth, it was over. The next day, with the documents and recordings in hand, Lucas filed a lawsuit against Savannah and Mauricio. It didn't take long for the media to catch wind of the scandal. Corporate fraud. Attempted takeover. Illegal administration of substances without consent. Terrified of going to prison, Mauricio took a deal and spilled everything about Savannah. She was officially removed from the company. And, even worse for her, my father filed for divorce. Everything she had built came crashing down in a matter of days. And me? I was in control now. Months later, everything was different. My father, now healthier and free from Savannah, returned to the company, but he knew it was time to pass the torch. You fought for this, Gabriella. It's time for you to take the lead. And just like that, I became the new CEO of the company. Mariana remained by my side as my mentor. Fernando, now completely distanced from Savannah's schemes, became a valuable ally. Lucas, my loyal friend, was promoted to head of the legal department. And Savannah? Well, she disappeared. After the scandal, she fled to another country, trying to start over far from the spotlight. But she never regained the power she had craved so much. And me? I won. But more than that, I learned to never underestimate my enemies.